Smoke curls upward over Gaza's horizon, a familiar, terrible sight. The Israeli military says its latest strikes targeted Hamas positions after accusing the group of violating the fragile truce that had held for 10 tense days. In the crowded camp of al-Bureij, people run for cover, their screams mixing with the echo of collapsing walls. Moments later, columns of grey smoke blot out the sky. The air smells of dust, of fire, of fear. The Gaza Civil Defense reports at least 45 Palestinians killed in these attacks. Among the ruins, rescuers dig through debris with their bare hands. Families stand stunned, calling out the names of their missing. They were just sitting inside, one man mutters, clutching a broken piece of wood that was once his door. Nearby, a young boy's face is streaked with blood and ash. The Israeli Defense Forces claim Hamas fighters opened fire on their troops near Rafah in the southern Gaza Strip. According to an Israeli official, militants approached Israeli-controlled positions in the north and were, in his words, eliminated in a bombardment. The army confirms that 2 of its own soldiers were killed in the clashes. What was supposed to be a pause in fighting, a brief window for aid and recovery, has again turned into a day of death. Israel accuses Hamas of breaking the ceasefire agreement that began on October 10th, and in response, it has suspended the entry of humanitarian supplies until further notice. At the Rafah crossing, trucks loaded with flour, medicine and fuel turned back toward Egypt. Their drivers had hoped to cross into Gaza with relief supplies. Now they head home, their cargo undelivered. A United Nations logistics worker watching from the border fence says quietly, "Every delay here costs lives." Inside Gaza, shortages deepen by the hour. Hospitals run on backup generators, their wards packed with burn victims and shrapnel wounds. Fuel reserves are almost gone. Doctors say they are forced to choose which machines stay running. One nurse in Deir al-Bala says, "We save who we can. We pray for the rest." Hamas rejects Israel's accusations. In a statement released from Gaza City, the movement calls the Israeli claims pretexts designed to resume the aggression. The group insists it remains committed to the ceasefire and accuses Israel of deliberately escalating to shift blame. On the streets of al-Zawayda, smoke again rises from the ruins of what used to be a 3-story home. The building housed a small press office used by local journalists. Cameras lie shattered under rubble. A reporter's notebook flutters open in the wind, pages streaked with soot. The Israeli military says the strike targeted a communications hub linked to Hamas. But to residents, it's another sign that nowhere feels safe. A woman standing in the rubble holds up a child's shoe. "We don't have fighters here," she says softly, "just children and reporters." As night falls, the sky over Gaza glows orange. The low hum of drones fills the air, and families huddle in basements, waiting for quiet. On the Israeli side of the border, soldiers stare across the wire, alert and exhausted. The IDF releases video footage of what it describes as militants approaching its forces, shadows moving through the sand, then a flash of light as a missile strikes. By morning, Israel's government announces a new decision. Operations will pause once again. The ceasefire is to be reinstated. Officials describe it as a renewed enforcement of the truce, insisting that Israel's goal remains the recovery of hostages and the prevention of future attacks. That recovery continues quietly. In Tel Aviv, a convoy of military vehicles carries the bodies of Israeli hostages who died in Gaza to a forensic center. Soldiers stand at attention, saluting as the trucks pass. Behind the gates, a sign bears the name of the institution, a somber reminder of what the conflict has cost. 12 of 28 deceased hostages have been returned so far. Hamas, for its part, says it discovered another body and will hand it over if conditions permit. Israeli families of the missing wait in silence outside government offices, clutching photos, asking whether their loved ones are among those recovered. In Jerusalem, the Security Cabinet meets behind closed doors. An Israeli spokesman later tells reporters that the government's patience has limits. "If Hamas continues to test us," he says, "we will act." Across the Mediterranean, world leaders call for restraint. The United States urges both sides to uphold the ceasefire. A White House statement describes the situation as extremely fragile and emphasizes that humanitarian corridors must stay open. Egypt, which has long mediated between the two sides, says it will continue its efforts to stabilize the truce and prevent further suffering. But on the ground, ordinary people see little stability. In Al-Baraj, families gather for funerals, dozens of bodies wrapped in white shrouds lined up outside a makeshift morgue. The sound of prayers fills the air. A man carrying his brother's coffin says, "We buried peace with them." The truce, renewed or not, hangs by a thread. Every side claims the other started the latest escalation. For Gaza's civilians, the reasons hardly matter anymore. They live by the rhythm of explosions and brief, uneasy pauses. In the markets that still operate, food prices have doubled. Fuel for generators sells at impossible rates. UN trucks that managed to enter earlier in the week have already distributed their last supplies. The World Health Organization warns that more than half of Gaza's medical facilities are now non-functional. Israel's government maintains that any pause depends on Hamas's behavior. The ceasefire will hold, says one official, only if Hamas holds fire. But on social media, videos from Gaza show explosions lighting up the night sky just hours after the announcement. For journalists working in the enclave, reporting has become both a duty and a danger. The Committee to Protect Journalists says several media workers have been injured or displaced in the latest bombardment. One local correspondent records a voice memo from a shattered building. "We keep filming because if we stop, no one will know what happened here." Meanwhile, diplomatic pressure mounts. Qatar and Turkey call for an emergency meeting at the United Nations, urging a permanent halt to hostilities. The European Union issues a statement warning that the humanitarian crisis is approaching an irreversible point. Still, amid the chaos, small gestures of survival emerge. Volunteers distribute bread baked in shared ovens. Children collect rainwater in plastic buckets. In the ruins of Al Zawayda, a family hangs a bedsheet where a wall once stood, marking what remains of their home. By evening, a tense calm returns. The air still smells of smoke, but the explosions have stopped. In the distance, the faint sound of a muezzin's call to prayer rises through the dust. Life, fragile as it is, continues. Israel's announcement that it will re-implement the ceasefire offers a brief glimmer of hope, yet few believe it will last. The wounds are too deep, the distrust too heavy. Still, as ambulances return to the streets and aid convoys line up again at Rafah, the world watches, waiting to see whether this latest promise of peace can endure longer than the last. For now, Gaza breathes in short, cautious intervals. Between the ruins of war and the whispers of diplomacy, a weary population clings to the only thing left unbroken, the will to survive.